All right, it's an honor, really an honor and a privilege to be here. I couldn't express in words my gratitude to Pauline Hanson for her bold and courageous work over all these years. And I must say that she is indeed a true hero of in particular, the working class. Labor is the part of the elites and of oligarchs. The real party of the people is One Nation. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. Thank you, everyone here, for the opportunity to have a couple of words, and I hope you appreciate what I have to say. Let's try. I'm trying to be honest to my convictions. The British colonization of Australia began as the result of a decision by the Imperial Parliament to establish a new penal colony. Royal Navy officer Arthur Phillip was in charge of founding the penal colony of New South Wales in what later became to be known as the city of Sydney. As David First Roberts pointed out, Phillip was resolved to execute what he saw as his humane mission to treat the indigenous people with respect and to invite them to be part of the new society. Phillip appreciated the role of religion, and Christianity in particular, as the basis for an ordered and civilized society. And thanks to his insistence that there should be no slavery in a free land, the abolitionist principles of Sir William Wilberforce were embedded from the outset. Inspired by the example of Wilberforce, many of the settlers set to protect the Australian Aborigines. This is not to say there were no negative influences. You know very well, can I leave this with you? That Darwinism was a major problem, and but I prefer to explain this on another context. But Christian values and traditions were incorporated to Australia, among other things, via the English common law system. At the time of settlement, Christianity formed an integral part of the English system of law and government. I have written a 3-volume collection on this particular topic, by the way, so I don't have to extend so much on this. You just need to have the opportunity one day to read my 3 volumes on the subject. By contrast, the native inhabitants who occupied the Australian soil were comprised of a collection of hundreds of tribes speaking different languages, devoid of collective political purpose or leadership, often at war at each other and without the structures to allow sovereign negotiations or dealings. The attempt to identify aspects of Aboriginal law resulted in the artificial imposition of alien categories of thought on tribal society. Hence, Australia was simply declared as terra nullius, and its reception of the common law reaffirmed by Lord Waddesdon in Cooper and Stewart, 1889, insofar as it is reasonably applicable to the circumstances of the colony. Despite the lack of Aboriginal legal recognition, the instructions from the British government to govern Phillip explicitly mentioned the protection of the native population. The natives were legally recognized as subjects of the Crown and as such entitled to the full protection of the law. Governor Phillip's instructions dated 25th April 1787 explains this, but I don't have the patience, the opportunity to quote it here. I'll probably publish these eventually, so just wait a little bit more. Australia is now a federal system, it's a federation, and following the American federal model, the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Australia provides for a sharing of powers between the federal parliament and the parliaments of the respective states. Each state in Australia has its power to legislate and to create their own constitutions, parliaments, and governments, provided the explicit limitations as provided by the Constitution. As it currently stands, the Australian Constitution can only be amended through a mode of alteration as provided by Section 128 of the Constitution. Since 1901, 44 proposals have been put to the Australian people. Only 8 of them, or just 18%, have been successfully approved. 26 of the 38 referenda questions posed since Federation have involved attempts to concentrate more power in Canberra at the expense of the states. And in 1999, the political establishment required Australians to decide on whether a new preamble should be added to the Constitution, which contained the recognition of Aborigines and Torres Strait Islanders as the nation's first people, or peoples. However, only 39% voted yes. To make sure this will never happen again, the government is now committed to spend millions in an education campaign to convince you and other ordinary Australians that recognition in the Constitution carries a moral imperative and that another failed referendum is simply not acceptable. Of course, Aboriginal culture is already comprehensively recognized by the Australian law. Fortunately, as mentioned before, this is not something that is necessarily going to be vindicated. Instead of creating an authentic recognition, the fear is that the grant of constitutional privileges could drive us further apart than we have been for many generations. As noted Ian Callaghan, a former Australian High Court Justice, any constitutional provision which might seek to justify a different law for peoples of different ethnicity on the grounds of that ethnicity should be always resisted. This must be for reasons of fairness and social cohesion, as well as clarity of application. However, the Australian Prime Minister, this character who is known by the name of Anthony Albanese, commenced his election victory speech last May by declaring, on behalf of the Australian Labor Party, I commit to the Uluru Statement from the heart in full. This would involve a new amendment to the Constitution that would entrench First Nations voice in the Constitution, consisting of a standing body to advise federal parliament on laws that affect not just the Australian community, but potentially the nation as a whole. In July 2021, the Australian government released its final report on the Indigenous co-design process. This report proposes a consultative body offering advice to the government before a bill is introduced, as well as after a bill goes through its final phase of approval in Parliament. Called The Voice, this body of consultation consists of 24 unelected members of the Aboriginal community, unelected members of the Aboriginal community, including 5 members from remote regions. Due to the problems about confirming who is and who is not an Aborigine, the risk of a low turnout, apparently no member of this body will be elected. Sadly, this is the enduring legacy of Aboriginal affairs in Australia, writes Aboriginal writer Dallas Scott. He believes that the push for such a voice serves only a mostly urban elitist voice, with titles such as professor or doctor, demanding far-reaching changes to the Aboriginal community. As an Aboriginal writer, Scott is especially concerned about privileged inner city characters identifying themselves as Aboriginal, but that in his view don't have any idea about what it is like to be a real Aboriginal. The great hypocrisy is in all of this is that the very paternalistic behavior of the past that the present status quo so self-righteously decry, they now wish to constitutionalize and impose on the least fortunate, least educated, and most isolated members of society. Changing the constitution in order to add this unelected body to act on behalf of the Aboriginal community would add an irrefutably paternalistic element to the nation's legal institutional framework. Of course, amending the constitution to such a purpose would create different rules for different people. However, one of the great virtues of a constitution is precisely the equal treatment of all citizens, regardless of race, culture, or origin. The function of a constitution, especially ours, is not to report on history, but to distribute powers, limit the power of government. So why is there such a great push for this form of constitutional recognition, I ask? In the breakout of Australia, the real agenda behind Aboriginal recognition, Keith Winchester gives us his personal opinion on the subject. According to this Australian writer, historian, and former board member, mind you, and he managed to survive, of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, and I hope there is an ABC journalist to listen to what I'm saying. A lot of people today want to rewrite the Australian Constitution. The real aim of the hardcore of today's political elites is to gain a once-in-a-life opportunity to change the Constitution to fulfill their own political ambitions. Their ambitions are not centered on gaining more liberal reforms or making Australia more democratic, quite to the contrary. In fact, in order to fulfill their more hidden political agendas, most constitutional critics today regard democracy as an objective they must pursue, but not as an object they must pursue, but rather as an obstacle they must overcome. For them, it is democracy that's the problem, because it gives the majority of Australians the last word in deciding what governments must do. In the eyes of those who now dominate our cultural institutions and much of our political leadership, most ordinary Australians are not proper to make these decisions. I know that once upon a time a member of the Liberal Party, they used to call you uneducated, racist, rednecks, and that's how they refer to the people of this country. They don't like you. They don't like you, and you are being used as a useful idiot by voting these people. Unfortunately, we know very well that far too many people in this nation have been indoctrinated to believe that our Constitution is racist, that some areas in the document are racist. First of all, the Australian Constitution is no more than a federal compact or agreement between former colonies to create an indissoluble federal nation. Its primary function has never been to distribute rights and things like that. It's more about distributing powers between the federal government and the Australian states. It's a very practical document designed to establish a federal system of government. It's not the synopsis of Australia's history, and it was never intended to report history at all. And I can say more, but I don't have the opportunity, otherwise I will stay a little bit too long here, and everybody might be hungry, including myself. I just go a little bit further on this, just to, I promise I'll publish this in Quadrant, probably. It goes without saying that Aboriginal culture is already deeply recognized by Australian law. There are numerous laws, both federal and state, which positively address Aboriginal issues, including native title and heritage. But I must say that everything in this nation is totally broken. Broken. It's not working. Now, our Constitution is no longer respected as it should. And I feel very offended by that being. I don't go suing people by feeling offended as the left does, but I really hate those who destroyed my job. I was very proud of being a constitutional law professor. I'm still proud of this, because the only reason I became a constitutional law professor is to fight for human rights, for the rule of law, and ultimately to protect the people of this nation, because I felt in my heart that I was called from the other side of the world for a time such as this. And I believe that that's the reason I'm here. God called me to join you, my brothers and sisters here in this fight. Not just Gabriel, I would say, which fails to protect the fundamental rights. Nearly everything in our nation has been turned to crap. And that's what I put in this so-called, that I couldn't resist to use the word now. It seems that almost every ordinary citizen living in this country has been hurled into dystopia of bureaucratic arbitrariness, woke corporation policies, and all the legal and financial obstacles to economic freedom and prosperity. In today's Australia, the status quo is unsustainable. The underlying contest is between a small oligarchy who have gained power over the system and the vast majority of us who have little or no power. Those who are in power may appear to change with an election, but the system remains firmly in place. So forget politics as you've come to see it as an electoral contest between liberals and Labor, and look instead as a common oligarchy that is fully entrenched in power. The word oligarchy comes from the Greek word oligarchos, meaning few to rule or command. It means, according to the Britannica Encyclopedia, government by the few, especially despotic power exercised by a small and privileged group for corrupt and selfish purposes. I think that fits the category here perfectly well. It's a good way to describe those who are in power in this nation. Today, the great divide in this country is not between left and right. I'm being boycotted here. All right, thank you. I'm kidding. You're a good friend. I was just a bit worried of being censored. It's between people, but he's a good friend. I know he would never. It's between people and oligarchy. Let's try this one. I will repeat myself because this is an important passage in this talk. Today, the great divide in this country is not between left and right, it's between people and oligarchy. Of course, we already have socialism in this country, it's quite obvious, which is a form of state capitalism and a very good thing for the ruling elites. Most Australians are subject to harsh socialism. As a result, a handful of individuals dominate our politics and our economy. They are corrupt politicians, the bureaucratic sector, trade unionists, and a few so-called business people who can also count on government to shut out their competitors. Such individuals have corrupted our institutions, suppressed our basic rights, overtaxed the poor, and generated unprecedented levels of poverty and inequality in this nation. All this has been accompanied or followed by a dramatic increase in the political power of these oligarchs in more recent years, and an equally dramatic decline in the political influence of everyone else, including ourselves. Instead of being continuously used by them as useful idiots as they are treating us, we should focus instead on fighting those who have caused the wealth and power of a few to dramatically increase over the last years at the expense of the rest of us. Power is exercised through institutions, parliament, global corporations, and the executive branch of government, the judicial elite, university academics, and the media, including the media, social media, as organized by the state. But don't believe for 1 second that the system is a meritocracy in which individual effort and hard work are necessarily rewarded. That's not the case. Most importantly, it is necessary to understand how the oligarchy have to use the system to insulate itself from any accountability whatsoever. In this sense, the propagandists and useful idiots who are advancing their hidden agenda, even open agenda, never cease to foment racial resentments, describing the rule of law principle of equality before the law as undesirable, fueling racial hatred towards one another, and spreading unsubstantiated fears of another white Australia. This strategy gives the oligarchs free rein by dividing our people and distracting us from how we are being looted and silenced by them. Fortunately, history shows us that oligarchies cannot hold onto power forever. They have a monopoly on weapons, but when the majority comes to the view, their hope of power is illegitimate, then the oligarchs will become more vulnerable to a more popular resistance. This is why oligarchs acting, sorry, I'm almost finished, now it's just one page, you can relax. That's why they feel that they can hold this power by controlling the system. But we have to be convinced of their legitimacy, and you have to stop with the idea that they have legitimacy to oppress us. They have no legitimacy to oppress us. They are in the process of violation the laws of this nation. They are not a law unto themselves. It's time to speak truth to power, put an end to the madness of all these actions that are totally arbitrary, contrary to the Constitution. Ultimately, I can say so as a constitutional law academic for more than 15 years, and they thought that was reasonably good when they appointed me a law reform commissioner even. Of course, the perpetuation in power also involves bribes to gain the support of influential people in the media, coupled by manufactured threats such as of a supposedly deadly virus, or widespread racism, which requires further concentration of power, of course, in the hands of a few to fix a problem that certainly doesn't exist even. We, the common people of Australia, are angry at those at the top who have undermined our democratic institutions for their own personal benefit. Several of us have lost our jobs, savings, homes, and even loved ones during the crisis engendered through the postulation of a supposed pandemic. By the time I speak, some of you may be back in job, but your present job probably says or pays by the same, not so much as it used to pay even a couple of years ago. The way to overcome this problem is for us, the people of Australia, to finally get united. Finally. Not divided, because that's the strategy of the Romans. The ancient Romans used to use this strategy, divide and conquer. You are being useful idiots if you fall into this trap. These strategies going on for thousands of years. It's just to open up a good book of history. You have to be careful. Most books of history in Australia are crap, using the same word that I used before. Yes. There are just a few things I would agree with Karl Marx. Just very few. This is one of them. Karl Marx once stated, men make their own history, but they do not make it just as they please. They do make it under the circumstances chosen by themselves. To conclude, my fellow citizens, it's now time to fight back. It's time to resist the propagation of false and deceptive philosophies that continue to divide this great nation into lines of color, ethnicity, sexual orientation, and so forth. This is, of course, the modern-day revisitation of the divide and conquer mentality or approach, which was so successfully applied by the ancient Romans. So I can tell you one thing, so the people of Australia, unite! Unite! And you have nothing to lose but your chains. God bless you, and you have my support for a good cause, cause of freedom. I'm very delighted to have your presence here. I just want to say one thing. I promise you, never ever abandon this fight, because that's the fight that will ultimately decide the future of this nation and the future of our future generations. So let's continue here. Our fight supporting Pauline Hanson, One Nation, And never, never, ever we will give up until the victory is achieved. Because with God, all things are possible. And God is on our side. And we are on the side of the one who is right and just. Thank you very much. Thank you. I just forgot one thing. I have copies of, I even forgot the name of my book. Emergency Powers, it's a very long title. COVID-19 Restrictions and Mandatory Vaccination. It's a book written by me and a person called Emeritus Professor Gabriel Moines, and he's considered to be the leading constitutional law professor in Australia. And this is a book telling us how the rule of law has been undermined by these rather despicable ruling oligarchies who are now oppressing us. So if you want to know more about what I have to say on constitutional law matters, this book is being sold by $35. And God bless you and have a good meal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So it's my great pleasure to introduce the leader of One Nation, Senator Pauline Hanson.
Thank you. Well, look, first of all, I'd like to give a big thank you to Topolini's for having us here today and having a function here. I was gobsmacked when I was just told before arriving of what happened to Jamie and her parents with regards to it, and the police turning up here and dragging them off in the paddy wagon, and because they're standing up for their rights. Jamie, I do wish I had a quick chat to your mother by phone and your father, so hello to them. And, you know, it's people like yourself that you just have to stand up and you have to fight back. You can't allow these people in government, these elected members of parliament voted in by the people, they're supposed to serve the people, not themselves. And this whole COVID has been controlled by the major political parties and others over the people to control the people. Yes. Right from the very beginning, I stood my ground. Look, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a lawyer, I don't have degrees behind my name whatsoever, but I see myself as a common sense Australian who's probably more streetwise, that I know more about politics than these university kids that come out and think they want to be career politicians and tell the rest of us what to do with our lives and how to live our lives. Yeah. So the fight is not over with regards to the COVID, because I'm reintroducing another bill before a private member's bill, that it should be taken to the Fair Work Commission that businesses cannot discriminate against anyone if they do not have that jab. Children under the age of 18 from having that jab. So see where I go, and see if we have common sense and have the rest of the parliament to support me on my bill. But anyway, I won't hold my breath. There's not many there with common sense. A lot of them are brain dead, and I will be honest about it. Should be in Parliament. They're a bunch of yes people who cannot stand up for their own principles and stand up to represent the people of this nation. If you were going to expect a welcome to country or an acknowledgement of country from me, forget it. It's not happening. Start, you know, saying welcome to country, I feel like saying, will you give it a bloody break? So I don't acknowledge this to any meetings that I go to. I will not speak to it. I think that we are all Australians together. Yeah. Regardless of whether you were born here or migrated to this country. And I think those people that have moved moved to this nation, that have taken their citizenship, given their loyalty to this country, I have so much respect. If you are one of those people here, I have so much respect for you. Because it would be hard to give up your own country, move somewhere else and give up your loyalty to another country. And it shows me how much you are embracing the nation that you've made your homeland. But I remember one person said to me, she said, my mother and father came from Russia. And they actually said, and the father never wanted the daughter to speak English or learn English. But the mother said, no, this is the new homeland, you must learn to speak English. But the mother said, darling, you can learn to speak English, but you know, at the end of the day, home is where you are prepared to die. And it's so true, isn't it? That's your home. What's coming up now at the moment is the voice to Parliament. Like I said, I haven't got degrees. I'm not a professor in constitutional law. I was probably one of these many Australians that knew nothing much of the Constitution till I entered Parliament. Now, I can refer to pretty much of the Constitution. I've picked it up. I have gained so much respect for it because that document empowers me my rights as an Australian citizen. And to understand what it stands for, it's not taught to our children. It's not acknowledged by a lot of Australians and how powerful that document is. And as the professor said, the number of times to change laws in this nation or the Constitution must go to a referendum of the people to be changed by the people. And most of the time, the people knock it back. Why? Because you're not happy with what the politicians are putting before you. Why? Probably because you don't trust them. You've got good reason to. One of the successful ones was in 1967 when they actually wanted to change the Constitution, Section 51(26) of the Australian Constitution with regards to the Aboriginal and making laws for any race other than the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Now, people thought at that time they were voting in that referendum, please correct me if I'm wrong, was basically about, we were told, to bring the Aboriginals onto the census. We weren't told by taking these words out because they get your approval to change basically what they want to do, but they don't tell you the behind the scenes meaning of it. So when they changed that, the Constitution reads now that they can make specific laws for any race. They will say now that was racist, that they put in there, it wasn't for the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. When the framers of the Constitution invoked that section, that wasn't to actually leave the Aboriginal people out, not at all, because they were regarded as Australians. It was to be able to make special laws for the Kanakas, the Chinese, the Afghans that actually came here to work in Australia, whether the mines or the cane fields. And it was to actually be able to make special laws to control them in an area. We had immigration, and they came in under the immigration, but once they were in the country, they were able to then make laws so they could actually control their movements, because a lot of people were funded by companies, businesses that brought them out here to work. So that was the reason behind it. Nothing to do with any racist attitude towards Aboriginal people. Also the fact, as I said to you, they wanted to bring the Aboriginals onto the census in 1967. You see, the Aboriginal people weren't included in the census prior to that, but they were under the census programs of the states. So they weren't counted anyway. And another big thing, they say they weren't included in Australia. That's not true. You see, the Aboriginals and Aboriginal women had the vote before Constitution of 1901. They were able to vote in South Australia in 1895 and then in Western Australia in 1899, before the Federation. So Aboriginal men could vote, but in Western Australia and Queensland, they couldn't vote unless they had a lease or owned property of more than £100. But women could vote. Aboriginal women could vote. And also that vote, because South Australia, Northern Territory came under South Australia, so they could vote as well. So by saying they weren't included, that wasn't the truth. They have always been included. And the delegations that were set up was to represent all Australians. We're headed down the path now, there's been this push, and it's divisive for our nation, have no doubt about it, very divisive. And they've been pushing for this for quite some time. You see, when I first entered Parliament in 1996, it was brought to my attention of what was going on. You see, I was very interested in Aboriginal affairs at that time because I won my election, the biggest swing in the nation, in 1996 with a 22% swing, because I called for equality for all people. And I saw the inequality in the system purely based on race. Because of my comments, the Liberal Party, because I only got, by chance, got into politics. I never saw myself as a career politician. It was only by chance I ended up in local government, and from there I thought, gee, I felt I achieved a lot in local government working for the people. So then I decided to actually stand for federal politics. Little did I know that I upset the Liberal Party with my comments, and John Howard was terrified of this woman they started calling racist because I was targeting and I was saying about inequality in the system. So it came from John Howard that I actually had to go. I came across Peter Costello just a couple of years ago, and I said, oh, hi Peter, and everything was, I forget what was happening at the time, but anyway, he said, oh, hi, how are you going, Pauline? And I said, I bet you're sorry you got rid of me now. And he said, actually, I was with John Howard at the dinner that night, and he said, come up your name. And I thought, well, who the hell is Pauline Hanson? I said, well, now you know who I am, don't you? So anyway, he said, yes, he didn't remember it. A Dutch name from John Howard, I had to go, because John Howard was terrified of being called racist and a racist candidate. So they disendorsed me, but guess what? The people around Ipswich and Australia came from all over just to man my polling booths, to hand out how-vote cards, and the public support was amazing. And when I realised I was elected that night, it was like, wow, okay, where do I go from here? And it's quite interesting when people say to me, what keeps you going? You know, everything that had happened, and of course you don't know, my time in jail, maximum security. I was in there for 11 weeks, but I got a 3-year sentence and only released on my 3rd appeal. And to come back into politics, and I remember the media asked me, I said, oh, I'd have to have rocks in my head. Well, I must have rocks in my head because when I saw what was happening to our nation, there's no way in the wide world could I just walk away. Because it's not just about myself, it's about my country, my children, my grandchildren, my fellow Australians. It goes far beyond that. It's more than just that. And I've been given an opportunity, and sometimes I shake my head and I reckon, well, why me? Why have I been given this opportunity to be a voice for a lot of Australians? And it's not something that you can walk away from easily. You have the different pressures that's put upon you. You have everyone who wants to tear you down, who are part of the media want to have a go at you, or they put court cases or battles or people within your own party. It's a constant battle all the time. But then when I reflect on what I've been able to do and achieve over the period of time, I know I'm still here. And I'm proud to be here, and I'm so proud to be here. And now, you know, with this voice to Parliament, it is going to be the most, possibly, if it gets past, the most divisive piece of legislation are going to be impacted on our nation. Have no doubt about that. It will be divisive. We saw the problems that happened in South Africa with apartheid. And in 1999, when we were having the referendum to become a republic, I thought to myself, I'm basically a forward thinker. To be a politician is okay. You get all these policies out there, whinge about this, whinge about that, carry on. But at the end of the day, you know what? Stop your bloody whinging and come up with solutions. That's what people want to know. If you're going to whinge about something, tell us what you're going to do. And that's what politics is about. You have to have foresight, you have to have vision. You don't just, do it from day to day until the next election. You've got to actually work hard to see a future for this nation. And that's what we lack, is foresight, because they're career politicians who are only there for their seats. And if they buck the system, they won't get endorsement from their political parties again at the next election. So in 1999, I thought to myself, how I wanted to put in the preamble to acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional owners of this land, and also to put something in the Constitution about it was basically a little bit about voice to Parliament, basically the preamble, and it was about to become a republic. And I thought to myself, your Constitution is basically the foundation of our laws. And if we challenge those laws or legislation, we take it upon the Constitution. The Constitution then goes before the High Court. And the High Court is how they interpret the Constitution and what has happened. If we, the people, acknowledge and endorse our acknowledgement that they are the traditional owners of this land, that then can be challenged in the High Court. So if we ever become a republic or it reverts back, please pull me up any time if I'm wrong. This is just my way of thinking, okay?
You would get a high distinction.
So what I'm saying is, the judges now have become so left-leaning woke ideologists. I wouldn't trust their judgments anymore on how they interpret that law and the meaning. So if we ever become a republic and severed from Crown land and sovereignty, then we have acknowledged them as the traditional owners of this land, and it would revert back to native title. So keep that in mind. Under this Constitution, what they want to do is to invoke a voice to Parliament. If you want to do that, and you want advisors advising the people in Parliament, why do you need to change the Constitution? Why do you have to change that document? As Helen Polly, the Labor member for Tasmania, said, we need to put in the Constitution because then it can never be changed. They know that. In 2007, they've been pushing for this for years. In 2007, the United Nations Convention for Indigenous People acknowledged that they want an Aboriginal state or a nation within a nation. They've given their blessing for it. This is all leading up to that. And that's why you have to be very careful and understand what you may be handing away in this voice to Parliament. When I did my talk yesterday morning on the radio, I was followed by this fellow called the Yes Vote. And I don't know who he is, but anyway, his case was, well, it's going to more acknowledge where the money is going and, that it goes toward health and education. Well, what's wrong with doing that now? Why isn't it done now? 33 billion a year, billion, not million, billion a year is given to the Aboriginal industry, as I called it since 1996, the Aboriginal industry. $44,000 per Aboriginal compared to $22,000 to $24,000 for every other Australian. It's not about money. No proper audits are done on this Aboriginal industry. They have so many departments that are set up. There is so much nepotism, colonialism, corruption, theft that happens, but no one wants to speak about it or do anything about it. That is the problem. And the problem is also that these people have to start, and I shouldn't say that these people because they are people who actually need respect as Australians, as our forefathers have always considered them to be part of Australia. But I get my back up and I get frustrated and fed up, and especially all this tokenism that goes on, and welcome to the country and everything like that, and thinking that their culture, their beliefs is far greater or better than mine. Well, they're not. It's about working together. I've acknowledged their culture, I've acknowledged their traditions, by all means, but I will not keep leading down the path of having a foot in both camps, claiming Aboriginality when it suits you, and claiming the white man's way of life to get all the funding and benefits and everything that goes with it. Under traditional laws, to take your motorboat out with the motor on the back with the nets and everything, is that traditional fishing? And yet you can catch crabs and dugong and fish that, you know, other Australians can't catch. You know, and they talk about they want their own laws and traditions, and if we've given this, they want to acknowledge it in the voice of Parliament, having that representation. Well, which laws are there or traditions do we acknowledge? Is it ones where if you want to spear someone, you can go and spear them in the leg, or if someone's a relative of yours or someone you know, that gives you the right to go and murder them or their family members? Or do we acknowledge the fact that the young girls are taken as brides by old men, the elders of the tribe? Or what about the domestic violence that's out of control, or the sexual abuse? Which one? Tell me, which one? How many politicians really stand up there, apart from Jacinta Price, wants to speak about this and bring the truth? What's good about any of it? And we are saying, and welcome the country, acknowledge and respect the elders of past, present and future. A lot of these people, and I tell you what, I've travelled these communities. I've been up to North Queensland, I've been to Dungee, I've been up to the North Coast up here in Western Australia. I've travelled around. I've been with the Noongar Aboriginals here years ago who had met with me and gave me a didgeridoo. And I've met with the elders of Uluru who do not support the Uluru Statement. This is all by the Aboriginal activists pushing their own agenda to divide this nation. And that's what it's about. And that's why people have to understand the true meaning behind all this. Just tell me, okay, let's be honest in this room. I want to see hands of people who were considering, or who are considering, to give them the yes vote. Well, I'm pleased to see that because, you know, even if you were slightly thinking, you could put your hand up halfway. If you're considering it, because you know what, the only one I hear speaking out against this with them is Common Sense, who knows what she's talking about, is Jacinta Price. And I tell you now, what I'm hearing is Peter Dutton hasn't said a bloody word. As I keep saying, grow a set and start swinging them. Because I tell you what, the way he's going, and I like Peter. I've got on extremely well with Peter. But I tell you what, if he doesn't start joining the conversation at the moment, he's going to be left behind. And people won't know what's going on. And therefore, we actually have to take a stand. So I intend to actually do a tour and hit the road and speak to people and tell them exactly what this means to them as a nation. And as I said on the radio, they want their own parliament. They want a black nation with a nation. If not, they'll make a black state. And guess what? We will be paying for it. Because half the time they can't even run a bloody chook raffle, and they can't even, you know, and that's the truth of the matter. Because you don't keep throwing $33 billion at 850,000 people. I'll tell you some facts. In the first census of 1971, there was approximately 116,000 people. By 19 claimed to be Aboriginal. By 19 it was 265,000. By 1996, it was 352,000. By 2016, approximately about 670,000. In the last census, 850,000, an increase since the last one of 24%, yet the rest of Australia increased with migration 8%. So either it's very lucrative to get on board and call yourself an Aboriginal, or their birth rate is going through the bloody roof, so the birth rate is not there, what they're telling us. There is no true definition to Aboriginality, and I found this out in 1996. And I thought, what do you mean no definition? You all think there's possibly must have 1/8 blood or half blood, quarter blood, something. Did you think that? No. You see, you can actually, for the fact that you were born Aboriginal, or you self-identify as an Aboriginal. All the facts is that the elders will acknowledge you and accept you into the community. That is Aboriginality. So all these people are ticking boxes. I'll tick the box. No problem, tick the box. Okay. I saw a nurse and it was tick the box. She was working in Tamworth and she said, if we have an Aboriginal walk in here, we have to say, have you eaten? If they haven't eaten, we give them something to eat, a sandwich or something. White person walks in hungry, there's a vending machine down there. If we see they have no shoes, we give them a pair of shoes. White person, nothing. When they leave, we actually have to get a taxi for them. Everyone else find their own way. This is the inequality in the system. And I have always said, you give a helping hand to those that need a helping hand. I, as a Member of Parliament and a representative of the people of this nation, will not sit back and see people treated totally different, purely based on your race. You help people on an individual needs basis, not purely based on race. And when you see now that these people, and I gave you the figures, do you know that only 21% live in rural and remote areas? In remote and very remote areas, 21% of them. Most of them live in the cities and urban areas. So they're not so remote. And then the health, they have health given to them, and that health van that the taxpayers pay for will be travelling along. If you're white, you don't get that assistance, but if you're Aboriginal, you have that assistance for health given to you. The amount of money that's been thrown out for the factors of what we have given them. And I remember I put out a stats book. If you're Aboriginal, you can have a master's degree. You were given, jobs. You didn't have to wait. This is much the case of today. Today, if you're an Aboriginal, you want to go to boarding school, you can go to boarding school. You pay for the best boarding school to go to. And it's just beyond a joke, and it's ridiculous. And until these people, and I've been to these communities, and in these communities, it breaks my heart to see children as young as 3 and 4 on the streets in the middle of the night, sitting outside schools. You know why? Because of the domestic violence that's in their houses, or they actually get out of their houses because of the sexual abuse that is happening. That's the truth of the matter. But no one wants to do anything about it because you're called racist. That's only a word. If we are true to ourselves as a nation, really care and want to help these people, they talk about the disadvantage. Well, as I was taught, the helping hand is there if you want it. But you know what? You start looking at your inner self. And the old saying is, if you give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. And what we need to do is really start teaching these people. And the teaching is not just giving them handouts all the time. And it's not about, they say they work for dole. You know what work for dole is? They go and get picked up in the house, drive them down to the shed, sign off, drive them back home. That's work for dole. Or you might have 12 turn up to mow a house yard. That's working for dole. That's not the case at all. And the sexually transmitted diseases that go through these communities is higher than 80%. They actually have it. Domestic violence is huge, whereas if the judge said it's unbelievable. And they talk about the incarceration, deaths in custody. That's another joke as well. Because if you're chasing someone down the road and they have a car accident and they die, well then that's deaths in custody. So it's got nothing to do with you being a prisoner. They may have health issues and on the dialysis may die from that, but because it's under law or something, being investigated, that's a death in custody. You have more deaths from white people in custody than what you have with Aboriginals. So we've been hoodwinked and we've been lied to. We have no true facts or figures. And this is what people need to know. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself the question, are we going to allow this nation to be divided into black and white? Are we going to allow them to take away our rights as citizens of this nation? I was born here. I wasn't born anywhere else. There's no country in the world that I would fight for to the death for this nation. No Aboriginal has more right over this land for the same day, date and time as I have. Their rights doesn't go back to 60,000 years. I'm not interested in that. We are in today, date and time. Let's deal with the issues that we have today, not of the past. And until they acknowledge themselves that they have to start taking responsibility for their own actions, for their drugs, for the drink, for the alcohol, not sending the children to school, because what they've told me, they don't send the kids to school because the parents haven't had the education, so they feel embarrassed that they don't send the kids to school because they feel you don't need an education. That is the problem. There hasn't been enough hands on the ground with true common sense to deal with this issue. When you start dealing with that, and this sorry generation, the compensation that has been paid out over the years has been billions of dollars, hasn't changed anything. So do you really believe by giving them a voice to Parliament to look at any legislation that may involve the Aboriginal people it's going to make a damn bit of difference? It won't. Until we get, tell them to stand on their own 2 feet, that you can't keep these handouts. And I'm not just saying for the Aboriginals, I've said about handouts for everyone, right across the board. And I've said it publicly. This dole being on benefits has to stop. We have got people who are lifetime recipients of welfare. We've got 4th generation now on welfare. And the governments I've spoken to, they actually must make it at 2 out of 5 years you will receive welfare payments. The other 3, get up off your backside and go and find a job and start standing on your feet. But that's for everyone right across the board. You might think that I'm hard in my opinions and what I believe needs to happen. But I've looked at it for the last 20 years and I've spoken about this since 1996 and guess what? Nothing's changed. If anything, it is worse. And we are being fed a load of lies. If we really care about these Aboriginal people and the young ones coming through, the next generation, then it's about time we have to be truthful with ourselves, but more importantly, they need to be truthful with themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Pauline Hanson. I've actually got something for her to give Professor Augusto Zimmermann to thank him for speaking. We're running a bit short on time, but can we have 1 or 2 questions? Someone over here. You run a mic for both Professor and Pauline, and number 2 at the back there.
You ready?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my question's about the Republic, and I've spoken to some Aboriginals, and they don't like colonialism, right? I said the word right. But when you speak about the Chinese Communist Party, how they treat the Uyghurs, how they treat Indigenous and Solomon Islands, Fiji, etc., I ask myself the question: Like, and I ask this because I think the government's become too socialist, and they're taking over. They're actually using the Indigenous as a vehicle. They're using them, and my question is, like, if we become a republic and we lose our crown land to the Indigenous, which might be so much of a problem, but the thing is, whether we are giving our sovereign rights to to another nation, like China.
Well, I wouldn't say that we're giving our sovereign rights to another nation. We become a republic, but then we lose the Governor-General under the monarchy, and we actually will get our own president. But the Parliament in 1999 wanted to actually have the Parliament to elect their own president of the nation. So it wasn't the people's choice. They want to control it already. Well, who do we see lined up? Would it be Kevin Rudd? Would it be Julie Gillard? So anyway, I think Howard's getting a bit long in the tooth for it now, so it never happened. But it'll be one of the politicians, a pat on the back for their mates or whatever. So look, we have a system now, it's not broken, so don't touch it. Okay? So I do not agree with becoming a republic. The whole thing is they say that we should have our own head of state. That's their only argument that they've got. The head of state, the Governor-General, is appointed by the Prime Minister, and he listens to the Parliament. We don't pay any money to England, we don't owe them anything. We actually are protected under the whole system of the Westminster system that protects us and our rights. That's why I believe it's not broken, don't touch it.
We've got to hand the place back at 1:45. We just have the final question. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question. What lesson do you think Peter Dutton and other so-called conservatives can learn from the extraordinary victory of the unashamedly conservative Ron DeSantis in the recent midterm elections in America?
It has. A lot of people I've seen, I think Biden had a lot to do with that too. I don't think it's helped the Democratic vote that's happened in America. But we have seen what's happening in other countries around the world where the conservative vote is changing. People are actually voting more now for right-wing political parties. People, look, we're in real trouble in this country. I can see it. Real problems under the Labor Green government that we have. And David Pocock is the senator for the ACT. He's a progressive. He votes with the Labor and the Greens very often. So I don't think he's up to scratch. That's my opinion. I don't think he's up to scratch. And his man, who's actually lived in Zimbabwe, was thrown off his land with his parents because of Mugabe. And now he's come out here in his first speech in Parliament basically saying that this land belongs to the Aboriginal people. And I'm shaking my head. And I thought, well anyway, I've just got a few things to say to him. And if he wants to get into this debate. But look, it's people with this COVID, interest rates, recession, and what's happening in Australia, and this push for climate change heading down this path, the increased cost of living, we're going to lose jobs, industries, manufacturing will go, they will be shut down. People have to hurt and hurt a lot before they start waking up for who they vote for. Because the kids are brainwashed in the educational system come through and keep voting for the Greens if they're only ones for environmentalists. I'm an environmentalist, you're an environmentalist, we all love this world. But do it in a well-managed way that we can live and grow with it and don't destroy our economies. So until people realise that and stop voting for these ratbags and their policies and handing control to United Nations, multinationals, people out there who are making a lot of money out of our own pain. But that's what it's going to come to. That's the way I see it.
Thank you so much, Pauline.
Hey, Sean, can we get one more question from Freedom Media on the screen? People are throwing a heap of questions in there. There's
Quick
one
one.
absolute pearl.
Really quick one.
So, Pauline, the question from the screen is with the Federal Minister for Indigenous Affairs. what conversation is happening about what she is doing or what she's not doing as to why we need to have this referendum? What is Linda Bryan doing?
Look, I don't think, what is she doing? It's just this great big push that is actually happening with the Voice of Parliament, and they're saying that we need it because Aboriginals need to have their say. We've got 227 members of Parliament that represent all Australians, including the Aboriginal Indigenous Australians and Torres Strait Islanders, and I'm one of those 227. But apart from that, we've got another 11 members who identify as Aboriginal. The representation is there. So all their bodies have been set up. It is not going to change anything. This is the last nail in the coffin to then push for an Aboriginal black state that we are going to pay for. They are not going to run it themselves. They want remuneration from us. And then, at the moment, you've got 33% of Australia is under native title. There's another 31% that are under claims. They expect all that 10% will actually get passed. So 60% of Australia will be under native title. So they are pushing for everything they possibly can. You know, industries, manufacturing can't happen in Australia, or farming sector, mining, the whole lot can't go in now until they give us the nod. They are holding up so much development because they want this. At the end of the day, that's what it's about. And the true Aboriginal, the true black out there, they're not interested in all this. They don't care. They don't care. It's the activists and the white activists that are getting behind them and pushing them. The true black doesn't want to. But a lot of them, you know, they want jobs, they want futures, but we're not giving them an opportunity. And they use their poverty, their disadvantage, their conditions to push their own agenda. That's why it's never been fixed, because that's their reasons why we need the voice of Parliament. Well, I've got a different opinion, and I reckon if they let me have a bloody go, I'd make a difference with it.
Thank you, Pauline. The venue has to be reopened at 5 o'clock, so we need to start clearing out here at 1:45. I need to thank quite a few people. Washroom Studios, for also not only the Alan sing the national anthem, he's also publishing stuff on Washroom Studios. The volunteers, or the committee, could the committee stand up, who's been helping today? Thank you so much for putting this on. There are a few people who couldn't get tickets but managed to come in today. If you haven't paid, please see Paul Howard. Stand up, Paul, again. He's got the card there. Now, I was going to auction a few items to help the party's coffers. There's some bottles of wine here signed by Pauline. If you'd like to come and... they were sold for $500 each at the previous event. So if someone would like a memento signed by Pauline, there's some bottles here. We also have a standee at the back there that Pauline will sign as well. I think they went for several $100s at the previous function. So standees, wine, give your bid to Tim.
Alright, here's the bottle of wine, and actually it's a fantastic bloody bottle, it's a Shiraz. So have I got a bid from anyone? Let's get this up, let's put it clear out of this. $100. Anyone for $100? Okay, 100. 200? Anyone for higher than 200? Okay? 200? Okay, gone. Second bottle, 200. Who's going to match that? Right, okay, save it till next time. That's all right. We don't have this gentleman filled of anything. He's paid 200. Okay, that's signed at the back. Go and get Chung. Okay, we'll get to $7. I'll get out here. I'm a great organiser. Right, that one says the truth matters, okay, so that's one of the original ones. Now, I've got to tell you a story about this. I went up campaigning in Queensland, and the fellow had one of these in his front seat. He's started driving around town with that, and everyone's giving away. Anyway, they must have thought it looked like me. Anyway, they thought I must have been an absolute snob because I never waved back. That's it. Have we got a bid on this? Would anyone like to this? Is there $100 for this? Is 100 there? Have we got higher than that? Have we We've got 120. Anyone for 120? A lot of people keep me in the lounge room. Then he gets it done. Yes.
I'll outthink myself.
Okay. 120, that's fine. That's lovely. Okay, that's good. So it's all done. Thank you very much. And for those people who actually have joined today as a member, thank you very much. It's our membership that actually keeps the registration valid in this state. If we don't have your membership and the declaration, because it's coming up now, we have to have it in by then. This month, the membership plus the declaration. Those declaration forms is the most important because they're making it harder and harder for political parties to actually meet the standards. If we don't get these declaration forms in as well with your membership, then they will deregister us. And so therefore you go back to two political party systems. So please, if you want to be a member, you're not only helping the party with the registration, you're helping yourselves. Think about it. You're helping yourselves because you're enabling your right then to vote for someone else other than the two major political parties who are destroying our nation, your way of life, your standard of living. So it's about time. It's not about me. It's not about Pauline Hanson. I've started something, but I just want people to continue on because it's about you and your future in this nation. So it's about everyone has to give something. So it means that being a member or it means filling that form, then please do it because it means the survival of this party in Western Australia. To everyone, I think I've spoken enough. We're all going to get out of here. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Pauline.